Imagine taking a perfectly normal, standard garden hose from your backyard and hooking it directly up to a massive, high-pressure city fire hydrant. The thin rubber hose immediately bulges, stretches far beyond its intended limit, cracks under the immense pressure, and eventually bursts into pieces. Right now, this exact same violent mechanical nightmare might be happening inside the delicate blood vessels of your chest, and you wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't feel a single thing. There are no warning signs, no flashing red lights, and usually no pain, until something goes catastrophically wrong. This invisible, destructive force is the reality of high blood pressure, medically known as hypertension, and famously dubbed the silent killer by doctors. According to the World Health Organization's 2023 data, a staggering 1.28 billion adults worldwide are currently living with high blood pressure. But here is the most shocking statistic. About 46% of them, nearly half, are completely unaware that this pressure cooker is building inside them. So, what exactly is blood pressure anyway? To understand it, think of your heart as an incredibly dedicated, tireless mechanical water pump. Every single time it beats, it vigorously pushes a fresh wave of oxygen-rich blood through an astonishing 60,000-mile network of flexible pipes. Blood pressure is simply the physical, mechanical force that this flowing river of blood exerts against the inner walls of those arteries. In a perfectly healthy system, this pressure is like a gentle, steady stream. Your artery walls are naturally elastic and easily handle the smooth flow. But when you have high blood pressure, it's exactly like someone cranked the main water faucet up to the maximum level and snapped the handle off. Your poor, overworked heart has to struggle, pumping furiously and desperately, just to force the thick blood through the increasingly stubborn and rigid pipes. Over months and years, this constant, relentless pounding doesn't just exhaust your heart muscle, it actively tears apart the delicate pipes themselves. To truly grasp the silent damage happening, we need to shrink down to a microscopic size and examine the incredibly fragile armor lining your arteries. Welcome to the endothelium. This is the ultra-thin, delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, acting as the ultimate biological armor for your cardiovascular system. Think of the endothelium as millions of tiny, brave shield bearers standing shoulder to shoulder, forming a completely seamless, protective wall against the raging river of blood. In a healthy body, these little guards are relaxed and happy. Their interlocking energy shields create a perfectly smooth, frictionless surface for everything flowing past. They even have a superpower. They naturally produce a magical gas called nitric oxide, which tells the muscular walls behind them to relax and widen. This magical nitric oxide also acts like biological Teflon, making the shields incredibly slippery so that nothing, not even sticky fat cells, can attach to the walls. But when hypertension strikes, the gentle river transforms into a devastating, turbulent Category 5 hurricane. The sheer mechanical friction is just too much for them to handle. As the high-pressure blood furiously pounds against the walls 24 hours a day, the tiny shield bearers are violently pushed back, struggling desperately to hold their ground. It's like standing in front of a fire hose that never turns off. The poor endothelial cells become completely exhausted, vibrating and sweating under the immense stress. Then, the inevitable happens. The immense physical force begins to literally rip the tight junctions between these microscopic guards apart, breaking their once perfect formation. The overlapping energy shields shatter. Microscopic gaps begin to tear open along the artery wall, exposing the highly vulnerable muscle tissue hidden safely underneath. Medical professionals call this phenomenon endothelial dysfunction. It is the absolute critical ground zero for almost every single cardiovascular disease you can possibly think of. The protective biological Teflon coating is completely washed away by the turbulent flow. The inside of your artery transforms from a slick water slide into rough sandpaper. Without their shields, the endothelial cells are severely injured. But they aren't dead yet. They immediately start screaming for help, waving frantic biological red flags. They release special chemical distress signals into the bloodstream, essentially calling 911 and begging the body's emergency repair crew to come and fix the massive structural damage. This desperate call for help seems like a good idea, but unfortunately, the body's chosen repair method is about to make this terrible situation significantly worse. These well-meaning yellow blobs are LDL cholesterol. Acting like tiny construction workers, they rush to the damaged sites to patch up the microscopic cracks with biological mortar. However, under the relentless, pounding force of high blood pressure, these cholesterol blobs are violently wedged deep beneath the broken endothelial shields. Trapped inside the dark, tight space inside the artery wall, the cholesterol begins to spoil and oxidize, essentially turning into toxic, rotting garbage. Your immune system's alarm bells go off. Detecting this toxic spill, the body deploys its elite cleanup crew, massive, hungry, white blood cells, known as macrophages. These muscular, white, Pac-Man-like defenders arrive on the scene with one mission: to aggressively swallow up the rotting cholesterol and clean the area. But because high pressure continuously forces more and more cholesterol into the cracks, the macrophages just keep eating, and eating, and eating. They gorge themselves on the toxic fat until they become horribly bloated, transforming into sluggish, immobilized structures that doctors aptly call foam cells. Unable to move or digest the massive amount of fat, these foam cells eventually burst and die, spilling their toxic contents right back into the wall. What started as a simple repair job has now become a growing, festering graveyard of dead immune cells, rotting fat, and cellular debris. This disgusting, highly inflammatory biological landfill is called an atherosclerotic plaque. It is the literal foundation of almost all heart attacks and strokes. The American Heart Association notes that high blood pressure acts as a supercharger for this condition, accelerating plaque buildup incredibly fast, even in young adults. As this toxic graveyard expands deep within the wall, it physically pushes the surviving endothelial cells upward, creating a massive, swollen bulge. The once wide-open, spacious tunnel of your blood vessel is now severely narrowed. The poor red blood cells must violently squeeze through the tiny opening. And here is the terrifying paradox. When you force the same amount of fluid through a much narrower pipe, the pressure skyrockets even higher. This creates a deadly, self-feeding, vicious cycle. The higher the pressure, the more the walls tear. The more they tear, the more plaque builds up. As if the toxic plaque wasn't bad enough, the artery wall itself undergoes a terrifying transformation. To handle the constant pounding, the muscle thickens. The once flexible, bouncy rubber hose turns into a rigid, unforgiving, stiff PVC pipe.
This stiffness restricts blood
Doctors call
flow and
this
can lead to
severe
serious
hardening,
health issues.
arteriosclerosis. Now, let's check back on our hard-working mechanical pump, the heart. It suddenly realizes that pushing fluid into a stiff, narrow pipe is nearly impossible. To compensate for this massive resistance, the heart muscle is forced to bulk up. It literally goes into overdrive, desperately building more muscle mass. But this isn't a healthy gym workout. The heart becomes dangerously swollen and bloated, a condition known as left ventricular hypertrophy. According to the Mayo Clinic, this overgrown, exhausted heart muscle eventually becomes too stiff to fill properly, directly leading to devastating heart failure. And the damage doesn't stop at the heart. Think about where all this high-pressure fluid is being forcefully blasted. Straight into your delicate organs. Deep inside your brain, there are millions of microscopic, fragile blood vessels. They're absolutely not designed to handle the force of a fire hydrant. When the high-pressure wave hits these tiny, sensitive tubes, they bulge outward like overinflated balloons, creating dangerous weak spots called microaneurysms. Eventually, these tiny balloons can quietly pop, causing microscopic leaks. You won't feel a massive stroke, but tiny pieces of your brain simply stop working. The National Institutes of Health warns that this silent, continuous microdamage is actually one of the leading global causes of cognitive decline and vascular dementia. Next, the violent pressure wave crashes into your kidneys.
Let's make it super clean.
These twin organs act as your body's incredibly precise, delicate filtration system. The kidneys are packed with tiny, fragile biological sieves. The high-pressure blood furiously blasts through them, physically tearing large holes in the delicate mesh. Instead of just filtering waste, these broken sieves allow precious proteins and essential nutrients to leak right out of your body, causing irreversible kidney disease. Your heart is failing, your brain is quietly short-circuiting, and your kidneys are tearing apart. And remember, you still haven't felt a single symptom. While this silent, invisible destruction sounds absolutely terrifying, there is incredibly good news. Your cardiovascular system possesses an astonishing ability to heal and reverse this damage. The ultimate goal is to help your battered endothelial cells rebuild their magical Teflon shields. To do this, we need to naturally boost the production of nitric oxide. How? Through movement. Regular aerobic exercise physically forces blood to flow faster in a healthy way. This friction tickles the endothelial cells, stimulating massive nitric oxide production. Next, we have to fix the fluid volume. When you eat too much sodium, it acts like a biological sponge, pulling extra water into your bloodstream and increasing the pressure. Enter potassium. Think of potassium as a biological bouncer. It actively grabs the excess sodium and forces your kidneys to flush it completely out of your system. This is the
DASH
core
diet can
of the
lower
DASH
blood
diet.
pressure by 8 to 14
The
millimeters
National
of mercury.
Institutes of Health
This is
found that
supported by the
adopting this
National Institutes of
potassium-rich
Health.
diet can
A simple
dramatically
change for a
drop your
healthier heart.
systolic pressure by 8 to 14 points. By simply loading up on leafy greens, bananas, and sweet potatoes, you are deploying a massive, relentless army of potassium bouncers to immediately relieve the pressure on your pipes. You also need to switch off the emergency alarms. Chronic stress keeps your brain flooded with cortisol, a survival hormone that chemically forces your blood vessels to squeeze tightly shut. Practices like deep breathing, meditation, or just getting a solid 8 hours of sleep activate your parasympathetic nervous system, chemically telling those stiffened muscles to finally relax and open up. However, sometimes lifestyle changes simply aren't enough to break the cycle, especially if genetics are involved, and that is completely okay. This is exactly where modern medicine steps in. Blood pressure medications act like specialized molecular tools. Some act as chemical wrenches to manually open the pipes, instantly dropping the pressure and giving your endothelium a desperately needed break. But the most crucial step of all is stepping out of the dark. You simply cannot fix an invisible, silent problem if you don't even know it exists. Get a home blood pressure monitor. Visit your doctor regularly.
There we go.
Knowing
A
your
perfect
numbers
120
is your
over 80.
ultimate and most
That's
effective
great to hear.
shield against the silent
up.
killer. By taking control today, you can transform that raging, destructive fire hydrant back into a calm, life-giving river, keeping your entire body healthy for decades to come. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and does not substitute for professional medical advice. Please consult your doctor before making any changes to your health regimen.